Let's pray. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together, and bless us as we go about studying your word. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Okay. Let me ask you, because we're looking at stupid little box. What does Islam mean to you? When you hear Islam or Muslim,
it's foreign.
What does it mean to you?
A foreign language I don't understand.
Don't understand. Foreign country.
Terrorism. Okay. That believe in the Quran.
Now, our folks who may be listening to it cannot identify with that hand gesture you just made, Sandy. And by me saying it, the assumption is you made another kind of hand gesture. It wasn't that.
No, it was just.
But it was you put your thumbs down. Okay. So you have thumbs. You were thumb downing.
Yeah.
What is it to you? What does it mean to you?
It's just another viewpoint.
Another viewpoint.
Of
Religion. Once in a while.
a central religion to the world.
Okay.
Because it's
Okay. Central religion
All those
in the
virgins.
world. Huh?
Do something bad and you get all those virgins.
that's just
Do something bad and you get a lot of virgins.
That's the guy
Yeah.
that did that.
Different
Well,
language.
Yeah.
hope so.
That's a different language
Well,
to
guys
me.
can be virgins too.
Which is kind of an interesting, calling card, especially when you put it on a billboard. It looks different. Now, is Islam a threat?
Is it
Good
Good. That's why I asked it.
My experience with Islam overseas has been just neutral.
Okay.
Back in the United States, it hasn't been so neutral.
Okay.
And back in what I see on TV, the Taliban is not neutral either.
Right.
I can give you my personal experience down in Jacksonville, Florida. We lived in a section called Orange Park. It was a Islamic culture center. It was a fair-sized building, maybe 4 miles. But they went around, they were trying to buy all the independent child care centers. And that was my first experience with them, when they tried to buy the child care center right next to us. But they were trying to influence the community through the child care centers about, I guess, the holiness or the righteousness or the practice of Islam, as opposed to the rest of the community, and they also put up a big billboard. So that was my negative part of it, because they were very close minds to anybody that would try to understand them a little bit better. Christians weren't welcome into their worship service. We had a representative who was trying to teach different world religions, and he was not welcome with his, I think they had a couple of members of his class, and they didn't welcome him into the temple. That was my negative experience with it there. And then on the Afghanistan, with the Taliban, they just do terrible things in the name of Islam.
Okay.
And so I don't understand all aspects of Islam in that, my basic understanding of it is, it's not a violent or repressive religion. They respect women. But I see other aspects of it where they just treat women terribly.
Okay. So you would say it's a threat?
I would say that there is such a big Islam. There's aspects of it are, but I think the core of Islam is not a threat.
Okay.
But when they get radicalized, that's the only word I know how to use, or they have a different mission than what the basic Islamic beliefs are, yes, it can be and is a threat to part of our society.
Or charismatics. I don't think there's any difference.
Do they go
Except that
around beheading
over
people in
here,
the charismatic movement?
Evangelists,
Lighting them on fire?
huh?
Yeah, that's why I don't.
She said, they go around beheading people, or putting them in cages,
They
lighting
want
them
to
on
dictate
fire.
what you can do with your body. They want to dictate, the
Well-
evangelicals want to dictate their morality on you.
They're still not lighting them on fire and chopping off their heads.
Who says it might not be
What-
that way?
Islam is, it's not, is that Islam?
That's the radical, the top one.
Yeah,
The bottom one is their service to people.
okay.
They believe in, helping and serving the
Okay.
real good Islam.
Like you said, the core.
Yeah,
Somebody
core.
listen to the core.
Okay. So, and this is Islam too. Now, as you just look at him, describe it.
Nice dressed man in a
Nice dressed man.
Yeah, nice suit.
With
Happy,
short hair
You
and
know?
good looking. Beautiful.
Oh, stop that! Joy wants to know if he's single.
Okay. Joy wants to know if he's single. And by the way, if anybody in a foreign country is listening to this, please send a picture and your telephone number. Yeah. That's
He looks like an American businessman.
That's
Yes.
why.
well, that's interesting because he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's also
United States, yeah.
He's also Muslim. Yeah. Okay. All right. So if we think about Islam, what has tended to shape our view of Islam?
Taliban. and-
Okay, the Taliban
The news
has.
were telling us.
Huh?
The things. that
Okay.
they-
We some of the stuff we see on the news.
Yeah. They make
Uh,
them look
Their
bad.
terrorist activities
Yeah.
and
Terrorist
their
activity.
Not the good
horrendous
things.
treatment of other Muslims.
Okay.
And not just Christians or women, but they terrorize their own.
Now, when you say they, who are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about,
ISIS.
in this case, I'm talking about Taliban.
Okay, so we talk about Taliban, we talk about ISIS, majority of Islam
No,
represent, no, they're a little minority. If a Muslim looks at a bomb at an abortion clinic that kills 2 people because it's been planted by a church in Nebraska and it blows up, kills 2 people around an abortion clinic, and they say Christianity or Crusaders, Christianity, Inquisition, Christianity.
I have a question.
Would
Why
that-
does the
is that- would that be
Christian
inaccurate?
point out bad things?
View of Christianity.
That was accurate.
Okay, well, but even then, was it a majority of Christians even then? No, it wasn't a majority.
So we can't judge.
Why
So
does the
we just have to be real careful. So what we're going to look at is, but certainly that shapes our perception of. But of course, that's not an unusual thing. I mean, when you think about even World War II, which I find fascinating, and in World War II, outside of the Italians, no offense to Italians,
I'm not.
okay, I don't want to offend any Italians, but I mean, they didn't do that well in the war. You had 2 major powers, right, in the Axis. 2 major powers. You had Germany and Japan, and when we were fighting the Germans, or when we were at war with Germany, if you look at news and movies, who were we fighting when we were fighting the Germans? We were fighting Hitler, we were fighting Nazis. We were fighting the Nazis. Far more fighting, we were fighting the Nazis rather than we were fighting Germans. We were fighting Nazis. In the East, we were fighting the Japanese. The Japanese. The imperialists, no, we were fighting Japanese. Okay, and so generalizing with the Germans, we were going to say, we're fighting the Nazis, but there are some real good Germans. There's some real good Germans, even in Germany. But the Japanese, we're fighting the Japanese. We're fighting all the Japanese. So generalizing based on some assumptions, that's not an unusual thing at all. So, but when we're looking at religions, we need to be aware, and we'll continue to be aware that this is something that's pretty natural to do.
Question.
Yeah.
What does his wife look like beside him?
Actually, she it's going to be very interesting. There's a dispute. There's no, absolutely not. She's absolutely not. There's a real debate among within Islam about dressing. It is very similar in where, and we'll get to dress in a little bit. But there are Christians that live here and where, that teach that women need to have their head covered, and you can see them at the store, because they have some can't cut the hair, so they have really long, and their head has to be covered. There's a Christian church here in town that teaches, and that's the way they dress. Now, if we look at that and say, oh, that's, if we were from someplace, they'd say, oh, that's Christian. That's Christian. That's the way Christians want their women to dress. See, look at that. It becomes a fact. There's a real debate within Islam about dress codes, whether the dress is prescribed or not. And in fact, it up until lately, we talk about 50 years, it was the side that was favored modern dress actually was far more influential in Islam. There's been a conservative backlash, but we see that in all religions. My gosh, there's a huge conservative backlash within Christianity, that we didn't see 50 years ago. That's occurred in the last 50 years. We're going to see the same thing in Hindu. We're going to see the same thing in Buddhism. There's a real conservative backlash. Get back to basics, get back to heritage, get back to and they'd say get back to truth. We've drifted too far away, we got to pull back. You see it within the Roman Catholic Church. My gosh, you've got folks that are talking about Latin Mass again. That's what we need to, the church needs to go back.
St. Peter's has a Latin Mass.
That we need to, Vatican II was a negative, need to go back to what worked for 1,000 years. Or for 1,500 years, and whether they're right or not, I don't know. But that we see that in all religions. It's not unique to Christianity or Islam or Hinduism particularly, but we see it all over. Okay, so we're going to talk about basic beliefs, and a little bit of history. Yeah.
So who is the guy?
I don't know.
You okay?
I don't know who he is. I just used him as a businessman. Yeah. You're really interested.
I just thought this is something I've heard of.
Well, I can't tell if he's married. I'll check and see a picture. We'll Google search.
It's like, oh, he's married, or married for the third time.
Yeah. So, if anybody knows this man. What's that?
Google images.
Yeah, we'll Google image. Okay, so let's talk a little. We'll do the same thing. We're going to talk about history, talk about beliefs, talk about practices, how Islam approaches other belief systems, and how Islam related to other religions historically. Okay, so we've got as we look at the history of Islam, we'll start by looking at Muhammad, and that's Muhammad's name. Now, why would, this is his name, why would I have include his name? This is the angel Gabriel talking to Muhammad, but this wasn't done by a Muslim. This is Mecca. All right, why do I have his name instead of a picture? Because Jesus, there are billions of pictures of Jesus floating around. Okay, he's a major prophet. That's really good, Miranda, because a lot of times, a lot of Christians think that he is like God. He is God. We worship Muhammad. A Muslim would be incredibly offended, or not offended, would say, you don't understand Islam. If you said we worship Muhammad, because Muslims don't. There's in Islamic culture, there's a real strong prohibition, concern about idolatry, and idolatry is capturing images, and so they are kind of radically against idolatry. So they won't even paint pictures. Therefore, what they do, and you can see this, it's really kind of cool. They do a lot of calligraphy, and they'll do all kinds of these images with using letters rather than creating, images and geometric shapes. If you look at a Muslim building, geometric shapes are used a lot. Okay, so if we talk now, what is the time frame? If we talk about Muslim history, the history of Islam, starting with Muhammad, why would we start with a Muhammad?
Because that's where the original version started.
Okay.
That was, a few hundred years after Jesus.
We've got Muhammad as the
Basis of
what he wrote. Now, whether a Muslim would say he wrote what God told him to write, a Christian would say no, he wrote what he thought. So it depends on if you're on the inside or outside. But Islam as a faith system begins with Muhammad. And does anybody know a time, like a time frame about when this would have occurred?
400 years after Jesus, I think.
Muhammad received his revelation in the year 610. 610. So we're talking about 7th century. Now, when we're looking at the 7th century, and where is Muhammad? Where is he hanging out?
Middle East.
Okay, he's hanging out in the Middle East. Okay, what part of the Middle East? Okay, well, he's in what's now Saudi Arabia, hanging out in Mecca. Okay, all right. Mecca's big sort of tourist place because they have a meteorite, but they don't know it's a meteorite. It's something that's really a stone. And it's sort of sacred stone, and they have a temple with all kinds of gods in the temple, and people come to visit it. Now, as soon as people come to visit this stuff, what kind of businesses start? Tourist stuff. If you want to get a replica of the stone, you can do that, right? Get a little statue of the stone. They have cardboard stones all around that you can get your picture taken, with it. Sort of like that. So it becomes kind of good. And he's hanging out in Mecca. Now, what other religions? We're talking about Middle East. What other religions would he have? And Mecca's a trade route. So a lot of people passing through Mecca. Okay, major trade route. What kind of religions is Muhammad or the people in Mecca? Who have they been exposed to?
Judaism.
Okay, they've been exposed to Judaism, because remember we've got what is called a diaspora. If you ever hear the word diaspora, that just means spread out. They'll talk about, the Jewish diaspora, they'll talk about the African diaspora. Any group that's been spread out from where they started, that's called diaspora. So you have a Jewish diaspora, the captivities and being led. So you have Jews all over the world, including in Mecca. You got Jews there, doing their thing, and you got Christianity there. You got Hindus doing their thing. You got Buddhists. You got Zoroastrians from Persia. You got a lot of people. So this is a cosmopolitan place. Muhammad's being exposed to a lot of different religions. Now the temple is polytheistic, which means they worship a lot of gods. But they're being exposed to Judaism, which holds how many gods? One. Christianity, a Christian would say one God. So we're talking about Zoroaster have good and evil, but the good is one. You don't have a whole bunch of good gods. You have one good God against the God evil. So he's being exposed to a lot of monotheism there in Mecca. All right. Now, so this is all percolating within Muhammad, all happening in the place where he's living. All right, how does Muhammad say he received? Well, even better than that, what happens to Muhammad? What happens if you listen to Muhammad? If Muhammad was here, and he'd say, for one, he was one heck of a fighter. He could move really fast. He could jab.
Yeah, good luck.
Floated like a butterfly, stung like a bee. All right. So Muhammad is there. If he were here and you said, "What happened to you, Muhammad?" He would say, "Well, let me tell you." What would you say? All right, I was out, out in the desert, and an angel appeared to me. Okay, and what did the angel do? Yeah, so the angel says this worshiping a whole bunch of gods, that's screwed up. As my daughter said, what does she say? That's lit. Oh. I don't know. That's lit. Well, that's what I try to say, and she just shakes her head. I work it in a conversation. You know what lit is, Ray? No. All right, you're too old. Anyway, so Muhammad and the angel starts talking to him, right? And Muhammad does what? Okay, he starts writing it down. And the angel is talking to him in Arabic. Because if he talked to him in English, like God spoke to the prophets, and the evangelists, because they all wrote in English, then he wouldn't understand it, right? So he's writing in Arabic, and he writes this down. And what are some of the things that Muhammad, what are some of the things really important that the angel says to Muhammad?
They follow a lot of Christianity.
One God.
Okay, only one God. Ooh, gosh, that's a radical thing. Muhammad writes that down. He's never heard that before. Not because he's been in an environment where monotheism is not strange and unusual, right? So this is one God. This is one. Okay, so he writes it down. Now he goes back to Mecca, and he's all excited, right? Because the angel appeared. You'd be excited. Sure. I'd be excited. Wouldn't you be excited?
Either that or they put me away.
What's that?
Either that or they put
Oh,
me
they put
away.
it. Yeah. Well, actually, they weren't real keen when Muhammad gets back to town. Why would they not be too keen?
Because they never heard of that before.
Yeah. He's suggesting that they got to start worshiping one God, right? And what does that do to the people in Mecca?
They don't have all their souvenirs.
Yeah, don't have the souvenirs. Drives the souvenir business. Becomes real difficult. So they think he's a crackpot, but he's also bad for business. And if you're a crackpot bad for business, then you're run out of town, right? And that's what they do. And so they run him out of Mecca to a little town called Medina. Little town to the north called Medina. And so Muhammad gets to Medina, and he's real tired because he's been running all the way because they ran him out of town. And the people in Medina say, "Why are you so tired?" And Muhammad says, "Because they chased me out of town." Why did they chase you out of town? Because there is what? One God. And the people in Medina say, that's something to think about. Yeah, they say it in Arabic though. So they say, "Man, this sounds like a pretty good idea. One God. Why don't we make you mayor? Yeah, we're going to make you mayor because that's a pretty good idea." And so Muhammad says, "I like it. I got to get back at these guys in Mecca anyway, and I will accept the role of mayor as long as you build me an army." And the people of Medina says, "How much is it going to cost?" And Muhammad said, "Don't worry about it. Once you take over Mecca, you get all those souvenirs." And they say, "Good deal." And so they form an army and attack Mecca and take over Mecca. Okay, now how is this somewhat different than what the Apostle Paul did to spread Christianity?
By force.
Yeah, it wasn't by force. When Muhammad then gets it back into Mecca, he says, okay guys, I got this big army, you know, you got a lot of cheap souvenirs and these cardboard rocks. Do you want to start worshiping one God? And they say,
Yeah. That's if you don't cut my hand.
well, okay, so you're dead. Anybody else? So we just killed Sue. Anybody else here want to worship a whole bunch of gods?
No.
You don't? You're okay, you're okay with that? Okay, because here's Sue's headless body right here, and that's her head. So right here, so everybody else cool worshiping one God? Okay, so what has Muhammad done? Okay, he's created a political force. So we've got Islam right at the very beginning, sort of combined with politics, right? It becomes a political military force. Yeah. Okay. And Muhammad with his little army ends up taking a lot of the Arabian Peninsula, but most of the Arabian Peninsula is sand. So you don't need a lot of soldiers to take sand. You know, sand resists very little. So, you know, he ends up taking over that, and then something very unfortunate happens to Muhammad. What happens to Muhammad?
Die.
Okay, Muhammad dies. Now, he's doing this in an area that is sort of ripe for what's happening. And he's also, remember when we talked about history of Judaism, that one of the advantages, Judaism became strong as a nation. Israel became strong as a nation when the two powers that were to the east and to the west, when they were weak or really well balanced. You know, when Egypt and whatever was going on in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, when they were either weak or equal power, the country in the middle becomes strong because it kind of becomes the place where things trade and a buffer, and they provide a balance. And that's when Israel becomes strong, when they're a buffer state between these two great powers. This is what, and the two great powers are kind of leaving them alone because they're dealing with their own stuff, right? When they're weak, it's usually because they've got governmental problems and they're dealing with their own, and sort of leaving the countries in between alone so Israel can sort of establish itself. That's what's happening in the Middle East. Y'all who've been with me in other history classes, historical movements occur when perfect storms occur, historical storms occur. When all of a sudden you don't have one thing, but you have a whole bunch of things that come together. You know, if you have one thing, it usually dies off. But when you got a bunch of things coming together, you know, then it starts sustaining itself. And that's what you got in the Middle East. You've got exposure to these other religions, monotheistic religions, you know, permeating the Arabian Peninsula. Okay? You've got a person who is consolidating political and military power in the Arabian Peninsula. You also have a time when you have two major empires that are fighting one another. Because you've got the Persians and you've got the Byzantines. You've got the Zoroastrian Persians and the Byzantine Christians, bang, fighting one another. And they've been fighting, the Romans have fought the Persians for 1,000 years. So it's not like they just started. They've been always fighting. You know, so you always have these two empires going at it. And that's what they're doing. And when you got two major powers who are going at it all the time, constantly fighting wars, what happens to both of those powers? They really get worn out because they've been fighting one another so long. And money has to go to sustain this military. So the focus is on building out big military, right, to fight, which means money is flowing from who? From the people being taxed, money going from the people to the military so they can fight these wars, right? So the countries are being worn out, right? The people are, you know, if I'm living in Greece and they're fighting the Persians, I could care less, but I'm paying a lot of taxes, you know, so we can fight the Persians. But I don't care. Persians aren't bothering me. I've never even seen one. You know, same thing going on with the Persians. So, and right there between them on the Arabian Peninsula, you get this new force. That's being energized by a person being energized by a set of beliefs. So now you've got a people that have a focus, you got a people with political and military power in the midst of an environment where you've got two major powers that are really weakened by war with one another. And internally, not particularly, socially, not particularly strong. Okay. So Muhammad dies, as all good prophets do. And that's when we end up with this enormous explosion in Islam. This enormous explosion in Islam. Islam ends up, and that's everything that's in pink. Starts with the red, but understand population is very, very, very small in the Arabian Peninsula. Ends up expanding. And what's that? Yeah. Well, but what it conquers is insane. Because what does it, well, and they don't know about it. Just messes up the saying. They end up, as they expand, and see, they've got this ideology. They got this meaning, that's uniting them. A purpose, they are converting people to God, right? To God. What is this area? Who has, what's the name of the country that is right here?
Saudi Arabia.
This is all Persia. This is all Persia. And they've been fighting the Byzantines. And the Byzantines control Egypt and Palestine and North Africa. All of this is good Christian land right here. And this is good Persian land. And they've been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting.
Is that Iraq and Iran today, that area?
This is Iran. This is Iraq.
Okay, and what's beside it today?
Which way?
On the left of Iran.
Right? That's Jordan. That's Syria.
Syria?
Syria's right there. Yeah. Okay? So all of this, what ends up, you have these two empires that are really weakened. The Persians, when the Arab Muslims come, man, the Persians are used to a sort of a monotheistic. So Zoroastrianism is kind of monotheistic. They're used to it. They fold like a house of cards. Because militarily they can't resist this energized force of Arabs that end up invading. Okay, now they fall. The Muslims are incredibly successful in conquering the Middle East and Egypt. And the Middle East and Egypt are prime Christian territory. I mean, this is solid Christian land. How were they so successful in conquering Christian territory?
Because they decided to help them.
Well, you've got corrupt. Tell me more about corrupted Christians.
We have them
The
today.
Crusades?
I mean, it's
Not yet.
I mean,
So we're talking about the 7th century, before the Crusades.
Well, they decided they're going to help the people by giving them things rather than persecuting them.
With Christianity, you got two disadvantages here. One, Christianity is associated with the state. Associated with the Byzantine state. The Byzantine emperor he's in control of the Eastern Church. So there's a connection. There's not a separation between church and state. The church and state are together. So when the Byzantine tax collectors come by, they're all wearing robes and great big crosses. And they're collecting for the emperor because he is fighting for Jesus Christ, fighting the Persians for Jesus Christ. So they're collecting. There's a connection between the state and the church, the Eastern Church. There's also the idea that the church needs to be otherworldly. That you build churches that represent how heaven will be. Right? Now, if you're going to build a representation of heaven on earth, what would it look like?
Cathedral?
Okay, Westminster Abbey. Describe for me what it would look like. Spacious, huge,
Idols.
fancy. Well, you want to be careful about idols, but real fancy,
It'd be peaceful.
peaceful. You know, what's going to keep it peaceful?
No fighting.
No fighting. What's the easiest way to get no fighting?
Don't argue.
Well, don't argue, but have you ever tried to get people together and not argue? What's the easiest way to get people to stop fighting?
Take your weapons.
Well, or keep people away. You know, sort of like the teacher that says,
Separating
I
from the
love,
world.
teaching, education is a wonderful, wonderful profession. If it just wasn't for those kids. You know, if you take the kids out of education, it is great. You know, if you want to avoid fighting in the church, what do?
Separating.
Just keep the people out of the church. You know?
Separating from the world.
Yeah, just bring them in one at a time. But it's going to be now to build something like that,
Lots of money.
costs a lot of money. Costs a lot of money. Now, are you doing what God wants you to do? Yeah, because the church is God's kingdom on earth, right? And you can't meet in a shack. If it's God's kingdom, it's got to look like God's kingdom. And the kingdom of God must look good.
Expensive.
Duh. Yeah, expensive. God doesn't worry about expenses. You know, you should see God's credit limit on his contracts. It's huge. You know, so you build this big stuff, and that takes money. Now, where's the church going to get money? From the people. So you got the state taking money from people to fight their wars. You got the church taking money for people. But the people, when they see the bishops walk with their golden staffs, you know, because they're shepherds, so they're walking with staffs, but they're made of gold. But you know, only the best for God, right? You don't want to be chintzy with God, you know. And so the people are doing that, and unfortunately, the people are
Tired.
starving, are hungry, and they're tired of it. And Muslims come in and say, and we're going to talk about this later, they're going to come in and say, and Christians will say, oh, no, we're Christians. So yes, got it in my car right here. And Muslims say, well, let's talk about it. How many gods do you worship? Christians say, one God. Should have had a VA. We worship one God too. Now, you talk about this Christian, so you believe in Jesus? So do we. We got Jesus right here. Whoa, sure, sounds sort of like we're what? Yeah, we're pretty close. But there is a difference, and you're not going to like this difference. I know you're not going to. You see, instead of building these great big churches, we believe, I know I hate to say it, but we believe that the people should have the money. We should take care of people. Money should be used to feed you. Won't go to bitch. In fact, we won't even have clergy. We don't even have clergy. So we can't be corrupt, you know. So the money goes to you. Now, I know you don't like that, you know, since we both have one God and since we both believe in Jesus and all that stuff, and we're going to give you all the money you want, I guess you still want to be Christian, right?
Well, who built the mosques then?
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. But even then, when a lot of the mosques end up being old Christian churches that they move into, you know, so that's what Islam does. And so they're amazingly effective in converting Christians. Christians are, and you know, Christians, we like to believe that they have a sword. You know, converted. But a lot of Christians were saying, you know, they didn't understand what Christianity's all about. Gosh, go on the street and have somebody to explain to you Christianity. You'll get some really interesting answers. You know, they didn't know what Christianity was all about. Worship one God, we both do. Believe in Jesus, we both do. Then helping the poor. Christians seem to be constantly taking from the poor. You know, Muslims say, didn't Jesus say, blessed are you who are poor? How can it be that? Well, I guess it's a different interpretation. We interpret that in a complicated way. We believe when Jesus said, blessed are the poor, it meant the poor were important. So you're important to us. And we want to help you. I guess it's just a different interpretation. You can believe the one that says just give your money and it goes to the church. That'll be good. That's what they do, remarkably successful. And make it even better because if somebody says, I'm not sure, I've been a Christian a long time, and if I convert, it's going to make Grandma mad. And if Grandma gets mad, she'll cut me out of the will, and that'd be bad. And a Muslim says, that's okay. Continue to be Christian. We're cool with that. The only thing, or Jew, we're cool with that. The only thing is your taxes may be a little higher, but not like triple. But it should be a little cost to make it. If Christianity is that important to you, you should be willing to pay a little bit more. And we're going to require, and this is going to be later, we're going to require your first son to join our army. Now you don't have a lot of kids, and we just want one. Little higher taxes, one son, heck of a lot better than what the Christians are doing to the Jews, because they're killing them. That's all we want. You can be a Christian all you want. Have fun. Go to your church. We're not even going to tear down your churches. You can have it. That's fine with me. Or your synagogue. We're okay. Just as long as you do those two things. And even the ones that are Christian are saying, hey, that's a better deal than the Byzantines. Because the Byzantines are doing what? They're taking all my sons to fight in the army of Christ. And they're taking all my money. This sounds like a better deal. So they're remarkably successful. Now, as soon as you have this kind of huge success, what's going to happen inside of it? Because remember, we have this early link between religion and politics. What is going to happen once you develop this empire?
Everybody's going to want to be there.
Everybody's going to want to be. Now, after the big guys start dying off, what's going to happen?
You need a government.
Okay, you got to have a government, right? And everybody who has some kind of power is more than happy to recognize this guy as the one in charge. That doesn't happen? No. So what ends up occurring in this huge empire? You end up with wars. What kind of wars are they called?
Holy wars.
Well, holy wars, but civil wars. You end up with civil wars. You inside of this society, right? Because you have one faction fighting other factions, and one faction supporting him, and one faction supporting him, and it's not going to be her supporting her, but then that's women don't count anyway, and you end up with these civil wars. There's a lot of people fighting one another. And so the empire goes through changes, it breaks, even we'll talk about this in a little bit, even Islam becomes, kind of breaks apart. But you have this rise of, and this is Caliphate. The Caliph was the political leader of Islam, political and spiritual leader. As time goes, the idea of Caliph there was a Caliph recognized by Islam, a spiritual leader until 1920. There's been no Caliph since 1920. So that's going to end in
Where? Just in that area or where?
Universal Islam.
Oh, like
Universal.
there's the Pope, then they have their...
That's right. Only he doesn't have the same authority. He represents Muslims, but he doesn't speak the word of God. There is one word of God, and that is John. So the one word of God, bless you, word of God, and that's the Quran. It's the word of God. So you don't supplement. You can't supplement it with other things. You can interpret it, but you don't supplement. So the Caliph is more like a symbol that unites. But in the early days, the Caliph was the emperor. He had political and military power. Okay, and that's why when they talk about a caliphate with ISIS, it's a weird thing. And most Muslims don't. You haven't had a political caliphate for 1,000 years. It was more a spiritual office, more as a symbol uniting Islam, and it was about as successful as the Pope uniting Christianity, because you got Protestants and Eastern all. So it's All right, Islam, when it's so widespread, now when in 16, we're talking about then the 1600s, 17th century, right? What's going on in Europe? Anybody know what's going on in Europe, 7th century?
The 7th century?
7th century. What has ceased to exist in Western Europe?
The
Roman Empire's gone. Roman Empire's gone. After the Roman Empire goes, and the Roman Empire is done by about 430, no more Roman Empire. Well, you have a Roman emperor, but he's a German, so you don't have an Italian emperor anymore, because you still like to, say, I'm the Roman emperor, but you're German, only you're saying it with a German accent. So you got a Roman Empire, but he's in Roman anymore. You got barbarians have moved in. What is going on in Western Europe by the 7th century?
I don't know, they're probably in war too.
They are in war too. Only it's horrible because what kind of wars are going on in Western Europe?
Power, probably.
You don't even. There's not even countries anymore. Have any of y'all ever seen a Mad Max movie? Yeah, that's the way it is in Western Europe. You got little bands of people fighting one another, and trying to take everything they can get because you have no central authority anymore. The only thing that was politically holding these people together was the Roman Empire, and more particularly the Roman army was holding it together. That's gone. And so who's enforcing laws? Nobody. And if all of a sudden there are no laws, what are people going to do?
Get out of control.
Crazy stuff. People are running amok. And that's why if you have a whole bunch of stuff, if I got a lot of stuff, right, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to lose it. Do I want to lose it? No. Heck no. So what do I better do? I better, well, if I hoard it, okay, so I hoard it. And are they going to get it?
Raise an army?
Yeah, I better hire some people to protect my stuff. So when a bunch of Huns come by, and say, where's your stuff? I can say, talk to Vito and Bruno. They'll show you the stuff. When the Vikings come and start hacking away at things, talk to my guys here. And so what you end up with is you end up with people that have stuff, or sometimes that have stolen stuff, seeking to protect themselves. So Western Europe is a mess. Now, when everybody is worried about getting their stuff stolen, is anybody farming?
No.
No, you don't have to. The only people farming are the people who are trying to survive. Because if I got stuff, I got to have somebody work in the fields, or I'm going to starve with all my stuff. So I'm going to send some people out to work the fields, to raise stuff for me. Are they going to eat well? Heck no, I'm going to feed them as little as possible. And if they don't feed me, I'm going to kill them. So it is a bad scene.
Were these tenants or were these slaves?
They were serfs.
Serfs?
And serfs become, yes, they become both. Because a serf belongs to the land. He doesn't belong to the ruler, he belongs to the land. So a tree belongs to the land, right? A river belongs to the land, and you belong to the land. And if you belong to the land, you can't go. You are there. And if somebody else takes the land, you stay there. You just get transferred. You're raising crops for the other guy. And that serfdom's going to last 1,000 years. Serfdom's going to continue in Russia until the middle of the 19th century. Lord have mercy, early 19th century. It's going to continue in Russia a long time, where the people belong to the land. Well, if you're doing that, are you going to be thinking about philosophy? No. If you're a king, like a ruler of one of these little places, are you going to think of philosophy? No. What are you thinking about? Survival and building better weapons to kill more people, right? To keep my stuff, protect my stuff. So am I thinking about medicine?
No.
Medicine, I'm upset, And then I want to go to the only person who's even relatively educated, which is the priest, because he pretends he can read it. And you go to the priest, and the priest says, say 3 Hail Marys and go home. Yeah, but I've got this big boil on my arm, and he says, "Ooh, yeah, that looks bad." Say 4 and go home. Because that's medical treatment. Because evidently God does not want you to use that arm. That's a curse by God, right? So all of this is going on in Western Europe. Nobody can read, so they can't read the doctors, the ancient Greeks and Romans who knew stuff about it. They are just all surviving. It is called the Dark Ages for a reason. It is dark. Okay. While that's going on there, though, Islam is going through a golden age. Because even though you got civil war, you got relative stability. People are eating okay. Therefore you got time to think. And you got all this ancient writings, because when they take over Egypt, you got these huge libraries with this ancient, all this good Greek stuff. And the Muslims, as long as you worship one God, they don't care where the ideas come from. So they're reading all these Greek books and they're putting it in their philosophy, and they really develop art. You see, good geometric shapes. And they build forts and stuff. And what is this? And this is Arabic here. What do you think is being written about here? About the eye. They're doing medical stuff. And the Muslims, because they feel real close to the Jews, because they see a common heritage with the Jews. Abrahamic heritage. So the Jews are doing their thing, and they're learning, and they're teaching, and the Muslims are soaking this in. And so you've got this really rich culture developing in the Middle East, while in Western Europe, people are fighting and running around howling at the moon. It's a mess. In Western Europe, it's a mess. It's Dark Ages. Yeah, it's not a good situation. So Islam is going through its golden age. Political time and some revival movements. And all empires go through this, except the United States. We will never go through this because we're special. It'll never happen to us. All empires until ours have gone through periods of rise and decline, sort of a life cycle. It just seems to be the way it is. Islam goes through the same thing. Now, in these pictures, there are certain very traumatic events in Islam. The little map. Does anybody know what that map is showing?
Trade routes?
Trade routes,
Well, you would think it would be trade. Actually, you're right. It is trade routes because that's a Silk Road, but it's illustrating something else.
well, it's illustrating ideas spreading.
Well, close. It's illustrating the spread of the bubonic plague that starts in China, but as it's moving west into Europe, it passes through the Middle East.
Fall in that hole, I'm gonna.
If I fall in that hole, you're going to do what?
I don't want to work.
You don't want to work tonight? I'm going to be really careful. All right. So, bubonic plague. What other traumas are going to occur in this Muslim world? The bubonic plague, we're talking about 12th century, 13th century. What other traumas are going to occur in this Middle East, in this Muslim? Well, the Crusades, and the Crusades are going to be a series of wars fought by Western Christianity, against Islam in the Middle East. Outside of the first Crusades, the other Crusades were kind of disappointing. Well, they were. They a lot of publicity, not much results. The first Crusades actually conquered Christian territory. They formed the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and duchies, because they want to set it up like they do in Western Europe. After that, the Crusades were mainly to defend this until it was gone, until these places were gone with the Third Crusade. And then the Fourth Crusade, which is 1215, was awful. You know, that was awful. Yes, that was awful because the Christian knights who were going to fight for Christianity sailed in Venetian boats. And the Venetians said, before you start killing Muslims, we would like you to do something for us. Since we're not charging you to sail on our boats, this is what we want you to do. We want you to take over.
Go to the Byzantines. They
Yes.
wanted them to fight the Byzantines,
Right.
which
And-
is Christian against Christian.
Right, and the Byzantines were all excited about the Crusades coming. And they put, the Byzantines was hard, Constantinople was a hard city to get. If you look at it, it's like a peninsula. So you don't have to, there's only one way to get there by ground. It's like a triangle. So you build a wall there, and you also build a wall around facing the water. But, you know, if you're going to attack, you're going to probably have to attack water. But what the Byzantines did in the harbor is they had this big chain that they would raise and lower. And, you know, when you have sailing boats or boats with oars, that's pretty formidable. And you had fort here. And so when your ships were stopped, you were in big trouble. You know, you kind of set ducks out there. And so the Fourth Crusade, the Crusaders are coming, and the Byzantines loved these Europeans to come, Western Europeans, because they would fight the Muslims, and the Byzantines didn't have to, because the Byzantines will always fight Muslims. And when the Fourth Crusade comes, they're going to fight Muslims, and the Byzantines says, hot dog. And so they say, lower the chain, and the Byzantines say, yeah, boy, we get these Western knights, we're going to show them a good time here in Constantinople, then send them off to kill some Muslims. And they let the chain down, and the Crusaders in their little Venetian boats dock, and the Byzantines say, welcome, brother Christians. And the Western Christian knights do what? Yeah, just cut their heads off, start killing them. And so Western Christians start killing Eastern Christians. Only the Eastern Christians were at a disadvantage. And the Western knights take over the Byzantine Empire. And later when, you know, the few Byzantines that are left, you know, come out and say, when are you going to go to fight Muslims? And the Western Crusaders say, well, you know, come to think of it, it's pretty good living here. And we did do something to glorify God, because we did kill a lot of Eastern Christians. And we know they're going to hell anyway. So maybe we'll just settle here. And so they set up a Latin empire in the East, and they do a lot of crazy stuff. But you have the Crusades, which become kind of a pain in the neck. And the empire, Muslim empire, is all divided into little groups. You have another invader that's far more effective, though, than the Crusaders, coming from the East, that's going to arrive in the 14th century. That's going to be a big problem. Big. Not Alexander's really much earlier.
That would be the Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan and the Mongols. And Genghis Khan and his Mongols invade. They ride little ponies. They're tiny little ponies. They shoot bows and arrows from the little ponies. But they were really little ponies. And they would shoot. And the Genghis Khan and the Mongols, they kill a lot of people. Now, eventually, the Mongols are going to convert to Islam. But if you resisted Genghis Khan and the Mongols, it was, well, that's, you know, think about it. If they're called Mongols, for crying out loud, are you going to, I mean, if they were called, you know, like Pekingese, or, you know, then you might say, oh, you know, I'll fight an army of Pekingese, you know, or Shih Tzus. See a bunch of Shih Tzus. You know, I'd do that. I'd pick up a sword and start fighting a Shih Tzu, right? But they're what? Mongols, for crying out loud. You know, they're drooling. They got these long Fu Manchu mustaches. You know, they're eating with their hands. You know, they're rough. They're dirty. Yeah. Oh, awful. I saw the Disney movie. Yeah, they're all real big. You know, and so, yeah, they're not refined. You know, they don't know which fork to use. You know, when they have dinner. What's that?
They're not educated.
They're not educated. You know, they don't speak their language. They're kind of Chinese looking. So they end up and they just beat the Arabs and the Persians, and they just whip them. And so a lot of turmoil. So there's a lot of reason why. As they're going down, what's happening in Western Europe? Western Europe started to come out. Because we're starting to find, you know, yeah. Actually, what ends up happening in Europe is the bubonic plague historically becomes a blessing to anyone who doesn't have it. Because all of a sudden, you know, the population goes down, which means there's more to eat. It also makes labor scarce. And when labor is scarce, there are more jobs and the pay is higher. So all of a sudden, if you're eating better, you're living longer. You don't have to work 24/7 to survive. Now all you have to work is, you know, 27 to survive. Now you got 4 hours to do what? To think about stuff. And to make better farm tools so that you can grow even more crops. And you start thinking. And so things start occurring in Western Europe. So Western Europe is on the rise. At the same time, the Muslims, the Arab Muslims, Persian Muslims, have just been pounded. Okay? They do spread to India. What is this? Okay, the Taj Mahal.
Now, that was Muslim?
Yes.
The Taj Mahal?
Yes.
It was like Hindu?
No. Taj Mahal, you know what the Taj Mahal is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tomb. It's a tomb. How can you, looking at it, how do you know it's Muslim?
The dome.
Not the dome.
The spire.
The minarets. The minarets. You know, they announced daily prayer. And so what the Muslims end up, because like I said, the Mongols will convert to Islam. Mongols were fascinating people. They were really harsh in warfare, but once they conquered a land, they were really benevolent, especially with religion. You know, once they conquered it, they'd let you worship anything. You know, so there weren't any strict religious. You didn't have to go to the Church of Mongol. The Mongol church. You know, you could do anything you wanted. And a lot of Mongols, because politically it was advantageous for the rulers to have the same religion as the people, converted to Islam. And they will, and we'll talk about Hindu next week, or whenever we look at it. Well, I guess it won't be next week. The Hindus are going to be ruled by Muslims for a long time. So the Mughals are going to take power in India and exert Muslim authority in India. So the Muslim empire is going to be really big. It's just not going to be united. Okay. So as it's declining, sort of in the Middle East, it's gaining strength in Southern Europe. Modern times, as you look at Islam now, I've got 4 pictures that sort of take Islam. Start with any picture you want. Who you're pointing at one. You immediately went like the which one are you
Osama bin Laden.
Which one? Osama bin Laden? Him?
No.
Oh no, not him. Him.
Yeah.
And also
Okay.
the Ayatollah.
Okay, and the Ayatollah. Ayatollah.
Iran.
Okay, Iran. Yes, Muslim Revolution in Iran. Yeah, the Shah. Was shipped out. Okay, so becomes important. But he looks so. Look, he's got a smile on his face. Osama bin Laden. You know, he's sitting there. Not good upholstery on the furniture. You know, kind of rough. Looks used. Associated with. Okay. Well, that's it depends on when this was taken. Yes, this was old enough. He used to get. This could be an American weapon because he was a friend for a while and then stopped being a friend. So we have these two. In fact, but it's important to remember, we'll talk about it next week, what this guy believes, and he looks stern. I mean, good gracious, how would you like that looking at you? How'd you like to be married to that? Joy, do you want his number?
She didn't jump on that.
Yeah.
I'll pass on that.
You'll pass on this? I mean, he looks really good. And Osama here, these guys absolutely hate one another. They're on opposite ends. There's one, he hates him more than he hates Americans, and vice versa. Because, and we're going to talk about it next week. Okay, so we got these two guys associated with Islam, right? Right? Okay, what about these two? What's this?
It's like construction work.
They look like construction workers. Yes, and what are they doing? They're having what they actually they are the Marx Brothers in a little known movie. No, they look like they're having what's that?
Village people.
They look like the village. Okay, it's the village people. Okay, so and by the way, I know he sings. I know. He said, but he's gay. So, but you know what they are? They're Germans. No, they are. They're at least working in Germany. They are Muslim migrants. They aren't terrorists. They aren't terrorists. They are what? Construction workers. Now, why would these Muslim Turks, and that's what they are, they're Turks. You can tell because they look Turkish. Why would those Muslim Turks? Oh, and Liz wouldn't be happy because she doesn't like Turks. The Muslims, she's Armenian. Armenians don't like Turks. Why would these Turks be working in Germany? Okay, that's where their jobs are, right? Now, are they making what Germans make? Heck no. Are they making more than most Turks make? Heck yes. And they're also doing what? Jobs the Germans don't want to do. So they're making less than Germans, but making more than Turks. Are they happy?
Probably.
Yeah, well, except this guy because he's single. They're happy. Are the Germans happy?
Yes.
Yes, because they're getting these dirty jobs done because no German wants to get that dirty. So they're Germans happy, Turks happy, doing this job. But that's this migration, this shift of people, particularly into Western Europe, becomes advantageous because the population of Western European countries is not growing. It's not growing. They're not having, what's the technical word? Give me the they're not having babies. That's the technical word. They're not having as many babies. So if you don't have babies, you adopt a Turk. You adopt a Turk. All right, so that's going on here. And who is this well-informed person down here? He looks like an American. He happens to be an American. And what is he doing? He's stating his opinion. And what is he? He's got
Islamophobic.
yeah, he's Islamic phobic and proud of it. Now, what does it mean to be Islamophobic? Whenever you have phobic at the end of the word, what does it mean? What does phobic mean? Well, actually, I don't know that he would say. Yeah, fear. I'm not sure. Whoever made that button is completely clear that phobic means afraid. Phobic doesn't mean not like. That's phobic means. I don't think he would say, yeah, I'm scared of him. But that's what it means. But he wouldn't say that last. Yeah. So, but he has. And why has he got a? That's that looks like Charlotte. That looks like Charlotte. Why does he have a pig on the sign?
He doesn't like police.
He doesn't like police. He's thinking about lunch. No. What's he thinking? That's a picture of his wife. No. What else?
They don't eat it.
Yes, Muslims don't eat pork. You know.
So I put a picture.
That don't make sense either.
Well, because it would irritate him.
Stupid bigot.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
not just a bigot, he's a stupid.
well, he's I don't know what. But yeah, it's to show he stands for pork, and that's anti-Muslim. Actually, it's kind of interesting. Then I'll let you go with this pork business. One of the problems the British had in India, because this results in the Sepoy rebellion in the 19th century, mid-19th century in India, is when you had musket loaders. You have a musket. Now, if you loaded a musket, even if it's rifle, it doesn't have to be smooth rifle. How did you, early on, how did you load a musket? You put it down the barrel. It wasn't breech load. You had to go down, it was muzzle load. It was a muzzle load. So it could be a rifle, but it was muzzle load. And so you had to put the powder, and you put the bullet, in there, and you rammed it down. Now that's why they had powder horns and stuff like that. Well, the problem in little bags with bullets. The problem with that is, you wasted. You had to get powder separate. Made a lot of sense to do what? To put it together. Yeah, like a bullet.
Yeah.
Only you're still going to load it through the muzzle, right? Okay. And if you make a bullet with a brass, but because it's musket, it's a musket though. You don't have a cap, so you don't want that. You want your powder to ignite. So if you're going to put the powder and the bullet together, what would you encase it with? How would you keep the powder and the bullet together? Because, sometimes soldiers don't think in the heat of battle. And so they pour too much powder in, and you need consistency, right? So you could regulate the amount of powder by putting it in what? But can't use it. You put it in a little container. Now, if you put it in a little container, you need a container. What is the quality of that container? Crucially important. Well, you wanted it. You wanted what else? Waterproof. What else?
You don't want to
What is even more important? Okay, you don't want it to fall apart. What else? If it doesn't do this, then it's a waste of time.
If it backfires on you.
Needed to go far.
Well, all of what you're saying is true.
You don't want to get wet.
But it's even more basic than that. More basic than that. If you've got a flint, and flint,
Yeah.
you create a spark. The spark ignites the powder,
Right.
discharges, forces, because you've got a compressed air, forces the bullet out, right? All right. So if you're going to put a packet that has powder and bullet, that packet has got to be, what surrounds that packet has to be
Flammable.
flammable.
Yeah.
If it's inflammable, you spark it, it's not going to discharge. It's not going to ignite the powder because the powder is being protected. So you've got to have something flammable, right? What would be something really cheap, available, and flammable? You could put well, you could use cotton.
That's some paper.
You could use paper. What they do is they start using paper. And so they put the shot and the powder in these little paper kind of packets for muzzle loaders. So you still have to drop it down. Now you got an obvious problem. If you've been shooting it a lot, what's the problem if you got a paper packet? It's going to be really hot, and what's going to occur? It may go off, it may discharge. And what makes that even worse is you've got a paper packet with powder and a shot. When you try to slide paper into a muzzle or into a tube, it doesn't necessarily slide very well. And if you're ramming this down, what ends up happening? It may fall apart, and then you've defeated the whole purpose of having it together, right? Okay, so what they start doing, and this is a long way to get to what they start coating these little packet with fat. So with fat, so that they can slide in. Now, one of the things though you have to do before you put it into the barrel, for the shot to have any control of the shot, if you put it as a sealed packet and it discharges, that means the bullet has to go through paper, right? Has to go through paper. So what they would do is, before you would ram it in, you'd have these little paper packets. You would coat it with grease, fat. You would have to tear the top of it off to put it in the end of the muzzle, ram it down, shoot it. Take another one out, tear it, muzzle, ram it, shoot it. Okay? All good.
But they're just tearing it to empty it in there.
Well, you may be tearing it to empty, but you're tearing, right? You're tearing.
Your lips.
Okay? You're touching your lips, right?
Your lips.
If you're using
Big fat.
pork fat, you use pork fat,
Yes, I do.
you know, that's going to upset
The Muslims.
the Muslim soldiers in your army. We're not talking about the sepoys were fighting for the British. You know, they were in British employ. The British who controlled India, ruled parts of it, controlled the rest, weren't real sensitive to the needs of the people they were ruling. And so they would coat these packets with pig fat. And Muslim soldiers said, we can't do that. And the British say, we don't care. Become civilized. Be a Christian and then you can eat anything. You know, and so this becomes a major issue in the middle 19th century, enough that you have, along with political stuff going on, this rebellion within British trained troops. Now that's a problem. You know, when British trained troops are fighting other British trained troops, you know, now you got a real big problem, and because they would coat these things with pork fat. It's an interesting thing. Okay, that's a little history of Islam. Next week we're going to talk about the beliefs of Islam. And be prepared. Some of the beliefs will absolutely astonish. Miranda, you are going to be astonished.
No, I won't.
You will. You'll be astonished by some of these beliefs.
There's gonna be some parables in
I don't
there.
care. I'll just ignore it.
Astonished.
It's a mere plug next week.
Okay? Questions? Good. Let's have a prayer and then go home. Okay. Lord God, thank you so much for calling us here. Thank you for guiding us through this little tiny mini history of Islam. Help us as we process it. Help us to see connections, you know, where we might share common points in history, not a common history, but that the process in both the East and the West may be very similar. So help us to see that so that we might understand what's going on a little better. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
Yeah, I'll just come up.